Hello and welcome to The Found Cause. We have found our cause and serve the Lord Jesus Christ. I'm Michael, the man behind the machine, and to my right is Sebastian, the bookkeeper. Today's episode is a special one because we got a viewer request to do an episode that me and Sebastian have been putting off for a very long time because I hate the topic. I hate the religion it's going to be on. You already know by the title. We're talking about Buddhism today. Which is surprisingly, as soon as I said we got a review request for Buddhism, Sebastian went into super research mode because Sebastian's the super sleuth. So he may have been researching a little too much. How you doing there, Sebastian? Sebastian, you there? Hey man, don't make me throw a book at you. I got a Bible somewhere I can.
Oh, hi Michael.
Hi there. A little too much research. You'll see. That's Sebastian's gonna be carrying this one again because you go on Wikipedia, which is the best place to research anything, and it's kind of the level we do here.
Do not insult. I'll tell them.
Okay, that's the level of research I do. Sebastian goes a little deeper than me, and boy, it's just the worst. Hinduism was awful when we did our episode on Hinduism. Researching that was just a pain in the butt. But this one equally so because Buddhism is essentially based off Hinduism. It's my kind of, but it does have other elements. Actually, a surprising amount of elements for a nonsense religion. So we're going to talk about it today. Sebastian is going to be the main driver of all the details behind, the things you never knew about Buddhism. What Buddha, 10 things Buddha doesn't want you to know, or whatever we could title this. But I want to start the episode off with talking about why we're even talking about Buddhism, right? So I'll say from the outset, there's not a lot of Buddhists, hardcore believing Buddhists, and we're going to go into what even that means here in America. You hear Buddhism, but actual believing, hardcore Buddhists, they are in Southeast Asia, so in Thailand, Myanmar, Vietnam, Southern China, Japan, Nepal, Tibet, all those places. But should you go there, of course, it's relevant to know what Buddhism is, and it's a large religion as far as things go. It's in India too, so it's good to know, kind of it's good to know Hinduism, even though there's really not many Hindus here. But it's more relevant, I think, to Americans than Hinduism is, per se, because there is a popular modified version of Buddhism that we practice here in the U.S. that we, collectively we practice it. It's very popular among celebrities and New Age gurus and yoga clinics and all this type of stuff. And so you encounter people who say they're Buddhists much more often than you encounter people that say they're Hindus that are totally American, they're totally white. I guess non-Indian is what I mean to say. And so I think as Christians, it's relevant to be equipped on how to approach them, especially if somebody is spiritually inclined and they've decided that they don't like Christianity, so they've latched on to Buddhism. They're probably open for some sort of debate because they've taken a stance, a particular non-Christian stance. They're a little stronger than somebody just pretending they're Christian, but they're not really. They've decided that they're going to stand against Christianity and for Buddhism, however serious they hold to Buddhism or not. They've actually stood against Christianity, which honestly is a pretty good starting place to start talking to somebody because at least they know they don't like God, and you can try to convict them in whatever you might do. So so whether you're going to Southeast Asia or Tibet or wherever and you're going to witness to real believing Buddhists, or you're here and you're going to be talking to just your neighborhood mom that has decided to adopt Buddhism, or your best friend or whoever might be influenced by the philosophy here, we're going to talk about both kinds here in this episode. So I'm really going to hand it off to Sebastian for the rest of the episode. Is really what I'm going to do is snooze over here while I meditate. First things first, Sebastian, anything you want to say about reasons why we should talk about Buddhism before we get into what it is?
You read my mind. You must have been meditating, so...
No, I don't condone that.
So another reason why I think it's important is what you hit on, the main ones, at least here in the West. There's something else, and perhaps more and more people coming to the U.S., especially in our age in college. I don't know if you noticed, at the U of M, there were many students that were studying abroad from China.
Oh, yeah. That's in every college, I think, in the U.S. these days.
Which wasn't a trend back in the early 2000s. It's picking, or in the 90s.
As China's become rich.
Yes. So, and then you might be, okay, whatever. And Chinese atheists, you might be surprised. In many cases, at least in southern China, there's this division. I'm sure people vary all over the place. Most likely, if someone is from southern China, they're actually Mahayana Buddhist. What is Mahayana? Oh, stay tuned to find out. But my point is, southern China, most likely they have some religious background, and they have at least had either the exposure from their parents or they were taught, probably not in school, but they at least have been to a temple or worshipped in some sense. So they have some background. So they have some, they're holding on to some Buddhist belief system if they're from southern China or even from the north or Mongolian. So.
Yeah, and I think the dads of these Communist Party officials that end up sending their kids over are usually totally atheist, right? And so their mothers had a lot of influence on them growing up, and the mothers usually are more spiritual, as happens all over the world. And so I think the kids are a little more open than their fathers would have been to that kind of stuff. So you're right. You'd think they would all be just flaming atheists, but they're really...
a mixed bag.
They're a total mixed bag. They don't really have opinions, is what I've determined. Like, they're not hardcore atheists. They're kind of like...
confused?
Yes. And
Confucius?
I've got a lot of things to say about some of those Chinese students. Some of them are brilliant and really good, and there's a lot of them that are surprisingly not brilliant. I guess you get when you get, it's not just the best of best immigrating in. It's like people sending their kids in. You get to see all the different varieties of people coming out of China, because there's some sad folks coming out of there that are sitting driving like the most expensive car on campus. But let's not even talk about that. That's for our episode on crazy rich Asians. I don't know. Let's go into organized Buddhism. Trigger warning. In case you don't like foreign languages, this is not the episode for you. You already heard Sebastian saying some weird Hindi thing. You say Pali.
Yes.
I don't know what they're many languages, but they're not American languages. And just like if you research into Islam or Hinduism for that matter, they love to use, I don't know if it's because of the recency of translated material, but they love to use like the original language to explain a lot of concepts, which is not necessary. We don't do that in Christianity, to my understanding. For the most part, there's some words we might use, but most of them are regular, in language words. But for whatever reason, Buddhism is one that uses a lot of original language words to explain concepts.
Yes, like we don't say salvation, it's a term. We're going to say soteros. Like Savior, yes, like Christ the Savior too, or like Christo the Greeks do that, I understand, like Christo Pantocrator. Yeah. You get what I'm saying. Like we use common English words or Spanish or German or Japanese or whatever to communicate Christian truths to everybody. For whatever strange reason, I mean, to my benefit, I picked up some Pali on the way for research because I just see it so much. And yes, even though Michael was saying, no, we do some hardcore research, I want everyone to know I've consumed at least 40 hours of Buddhism.
That's a sacrifice right there. I'm doing it for you guys.
Yes. I want to give the best and most accurate picture as possible. I don't want to be like those YouTubers that they just like when they talk about atheists, when they talk about Christianity, they just like open up a blog and then they say Jesus is a copy of Horus or Babylonian myths. And like, clearly you haven't even read. You don't even know what the first book in the Bible is. So yeah, I don't want to do that. My intention is I want to be submerged in. Michael might say that's probably a bad idea, but I think I'm fine. I think I turned out fine.
At very most, you're or at least you're doing them credit, right? To get into the materials. 40 hours, my goodness.
Yeah, and I would recommend everyone to do that too, if you have the time, of course. I recommend video because I can listen at 2 times speed and can listen to some nice monks preaching from actual like Bhutan or Tibet, or some. I've even seen videos in Chinese, which is like, wow, giving me flashbacks to college with subtitles, by the way, so I'm not that fluent, and then some secular Buddhist stuff. So anyway, without further ado, let's dive into the origins. So first, we're gonna focus on the original Buddhism, the structured, formal, institutional that you would see in Thailand, southern China, Tibet, Bhutan, Nepal, etc. So Mongolia too, and parts of Russia, parts of southern Russia. There's a significant Buddhist population that migrated there. Anyway, Buddhism started obviously with the Buddha. Who is the Buddha? Siddhartha Gautama.
He's that fat boy we got sitting around. His name? No, he's not actually.
No.
I do know. That I've done enough research.
Yeah, so the fat Buddha, it's definitely not. That's just a saint, bodhisattva. See, for example, bodhisattva, you could call the person a saint or an apostle or something.
Why do that when you can use Hindi or whatever it is? Pali.
Yeah, no. I think it'd be more efficient to gain more converts to start using English. As you'll see, many terms I'll cite in Pali or in Sanskrit. Anyway, Siddhartha Gautama, he was from a noble family, reportedly, and this is BC. We're talking about it in their 800s, 700s BC. Some people say could be 600. So we'll say 700s. Why not? BC. So he was born in a noble family, and the background is his father, who was king at the time of an Indian state, he heard a prophecy from a traveling monk in which he said that your son will become a great ascetic. An ascetic is a person who renounces all property, all luxuries of this world, and just wanders off, basically a hermit, as a monk, pretty much. Yeah, a monk, and a really humble monk, not a fancy monk. And then the father's like, no, how could this be? No, I want my son to be king. He has to be the heir of all of this. So I'm going to do the most logical thing, which is going to lock him up in the palace and make sure he never leaves. As all parents would do.
Does he grow his hair out and has to like let a prince in? Is that how this ends? Oh, he shaves his head, doesn't he? Mistake number one. Good.
And puts on sackcloth and ashes, yes.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And so then he spends all of his youth in the palace, Siddhartha, until he's 19 or 20. And then by some chance, he leaves the palace. And when he's stumbling around after living a life of luxury and happiness and perpetual joy, which to that I find questionable, because you're gonna have puberty, you're gonna have sad moments. But anyway, according to the Buddhist story, it's bliss, ultimate bliss, and all of that jazz. He goes outside and he sees a crippled man who's on the verge of death, and then he asks his servants, "What the heck is happening to this man? What's wrong with him? He has never seen anyone grow old and die before." That's according to the stories. And then they explain, "Oh, he's dying. He's old. He's wrinkly." It's like, what? I don't know what wrinkly means. I'm embellishing here a little bit, but yeah. So that shocked him so much that then he had a fight with his dad and then decided to abandon all the luxuries of his life. He also met a monk on the way who explained to him, this is how you can actually find fulfillment in your life, which would be to renounce and get away from the world. We'll touch on the beliefs in a little bit. And then after that, then that's when he decides, okay, I'm going to be like that monk. I'm going to renounce all things and travel and try to seek enlightenment that way. So that's what he does. And then off into the wild he goes, traveling. And then eventually he does start to pick up a following called bhikkhus. Bhikkhus are the apostles. See, okay, again, why?
Well, we use the word apostles, don't we? It's just synonymous.
No, I understand. But even when I downloaded Pali Canon, so I've taken this stuff pretty seriously. It's in English. Many things are actually translated. There's the Pali on the side obviously with the Latin letters, and then the English meaning on the side. But bhikkhus, you could just say disciples or apostles. Like, I think it will benefit. I think it would be a good marketing strategy. I'm giving tips now.
You Buddhist publishers out there, please change it.
Call them disciples. That's gonna get some attention from some surface level Christians. So do it. Come on. Make my life easier too, because I want to read this stuff. And anyway, picks up some followings, and then he does have some conflicts on whether or not he should teach. But then eventually he does learn. He gets a message from Brahma. We'll talk about him later. Who's a spirit from a higher dimension, and then tells him, please preach. This would be good for humanity. So then he becomes a preacher after that.
Oh, and he's meditating for like how long? Like a really long time under a tree, isn't it? The classic story.
Yes.
And Isaac Newton's story without the apple.
Yes, and he's actually one of those when he's in that state, close to death because he stopped eating too. There's some Greek statues in Bactria, like in a border with India and Afghanistan. That used to be the kingdom, Indo-Greek kingdom. The Greeks, Alexander conquered all the way there. There's a mixture of Buddhism and Hellenism. There's a statue in which he is sitting there with the giant circle, the aura, the light flowing from him. But then he is like almost like a skeleton. Like you can see the skeletons in his arms and his rib cage because he's in that state of near starvation.
Yeah, and that's a good time to mention. So the fat Buddha that you see everywhere, like
you
said, that's some saint, it's some Chinese saint, but which is Buddhist saint, but not the Buddha. The Buddha that is supposed to be Buddha, like Siddhartha, the founder Buddha, he is the skinny one that you've probably also seen with all like the beads around his head. Maybe that's his hair. I don't really understand statues; they kind of look weird. But the one with the closed eyes and the gentle smile, that's the Buddha.
Yes, the joyful Buddha. That's a Chinese man that lived much later than
The
him.
laughing guy, I guess. Yeah.
Yes. Who has that protruding belly outside of his clothes. Yes, that one.
Not quite meditating in starvation there. That guy. Okay, so we got young Buddha. He goes from the palace, realizes suffering exists, and then he commits the prophecy. Classic Disney movie. Dad can't stop destiny, and he becomes an ascetic monk. Gets some disciples, and sitting under a tree meditating for a long time. I think it's 7 days, some long period, or maybe like 30 days. It's some long period of time. He's fasting. He's presented with a bunch of different spirits come to him in his meditation. Some are evil tempters trying to get him to go back into a life of debauchery. Some are just random spirits asking for help.
Yeah.
Getting to this third party from Sebastian, and then eventually big boy God. He's not the same as God, obviously for obvious reasons. It's Buddhism, but also he's not a head God, but it is just a very important large God comes to him and tells him, hey, you really should be teaching other people this stuff. And give me a cut. No, he doesn't say that.
Some embellishment right there. Yeah. And those deities, I think we might as well touch on it too. Buddhists might say they're atheist, in the sense that there's no supreme being that created the universe and ordains all things. Yes, these beings are called devas. Their translation is usually deities, but they're not gods like in Mormonism or like a Greek pantheon of gods who are immortal. These beings, they can die. They live for millions of years. See, I'm spilling so much already, but they will die in their realms, and they are in higher planes of existence. There are several planes of existence according to Buddhism, and then finally there's enlightenment at the very top, at the very tip of the skyscraper.
Nirvana, Kurt Cobain, they're all up there. Yes. Waiting for you to get there.
Yes. At the top of Trump Tower?
No. Kurt Cobain would not be anywhere near the top of Trump Tower. Okay.
All right. So
that's the history. And it's obviously spread throughout. So it started in Bactria, you're saying? I thought it was Nepal and northern India.
Okay. So it started in Bengal area, the border with Bengal. It spread to many places, starting with the Indian kingdoms. A big patron was the Mauryan Empire. I had to think of the name. Ashoka the Great, big patron of Buddhism, built statues everywhere of Buddha, columns, not only of himself, showing his achievements, but also of Buddhism, trying to get everyone to become Buddhist, because why not? It spread to Tibet. It spread to to Kashgar, the Silk Road area, Afghanistan. It spread even to Mongolia, Southeast Asia. Indonesia used to be Buddhist, and then the Muslims came in and replaced the population either peacefully or violently, as they usually do. And then also went to Korea, China, and then eventually Japan. And then in Japan it got its own flavor, which is a mixture of the traditional beliefs and then Buddhism, which is what we call Shintoism nowadays. So very distinct, but for the sake of this episode, I think we should leave Shintoism aside, because it's its own can of worms.
It's only Japanese anyway.
Yes, it's its own can of worms. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the basics of the history. Then give us the dirty deeds. You're starting to talk about these divas, which is a great name. Maybe I'll forgive them for not translating that one. That's a good one for their gods. But how do you get saved in Buddhism? I mean, frankly, just as a commentary here, before we started research, I had no idea. I knew the story about the Buddha, and so I figured they had to believe in some spirits. But I mean, Buddhists that today wouldn't give a rat's butt about other spirits. I mean, Buddhists here in the United States are essentially just atheists that have tacked on some of the wisdom of Buddha to their lives. So the stuff about the gods and the deities and even reincarnation is really foreign to what I associate with Buddhism. Of course, I know about reincarnation and nirvana. Those are kind of concepts that we talk about in Nirvana's, enlightenment, heaven. But all this deity stuff is the most interesting to me, that there is an organized religion of Buddhism that, somebody came up with maybe we should think more than 3 sentences into this belief and have a core construct. So Theravada Buddhism is real, actually has written material that is useful for understanding what they believe. Anyways, so all that said, how are you saved in Buddhism? Give me some of the dirty details of the core concepts.
Yes, sure. Also, before I go on that, I want to correct something I said, and I was thinking something else in the 8th century. So I said BC, confusing something else that was a later development in Buddhism. For Buddha, 5th century, 4th century BC.
Okay.
8th century, let's see, something else. My bad. So let's go now into we probably have heard, everyone in high school learns this, the Noble Eightfold Path.
I don't know if everyone in high school, but we did.
Okay, in our high school we did, so we're familiar with it, and it's depicted in the wheel of Buddhism. So you might see something that looks like a steering wheel in a ship.
Mm-hmm.
That's the classic symbol of Buddhism, and I'll just quickly go over them. These are just practices that you developed. Take note of that. You develop, and I'll just list them. It's right view, right intention, right speech, right conduct or action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right meditation. Not meditation in the Western sense in which you're like pondering or thinking of something, of meditation in which you are, as I was doing earlier, and emptying your mind or focusing on something to achieve a development in your process of enlightenment. So,
I mean, to be honest, these days that understanding of meditation in the West is probably more common than the old understanding of meditation. Like the Psalms say, meditate on your word day and night, meditate on this, meditate on that. That's just to focus, constantly thinking about a concept, not in a Zen way, not like repeating the same word over and over, but like thinking about it all the time. That's what like mulling over something. That's the equivalent of meditating. But these days, meditating, when you say meditating, people immediately think home, like, mindless, clearing your mind kind of meditation. So I would say the Western concept of meditating has been eaten by the Buddhist one.
Well, that makes my life easier then. I don't have to explain the difference between meditation, for better or for worse. So that is just simply so you can get the background of what the steps are. So all of these things, they all relate to practice. Practice is the key component in Buddhism, and a honest Theravada, and I'll get into the schools later, who is the most consistent, I would say, the most written, the most well-versed.
Theological.
Yes, theological, yes. And they are the ones who know who have, and they're more based on books. So most of the stuff that I read and listened to from Theravada sources. So sorry if you like the Dalai Lama or something like that, but Theravada, they're pretty consistent, so it's easier to study. Anyway, that is the focus on practice. So practice is part of your salvation, and then eventually, through this practice, you will fade away into nirvana, which is nothingness.
So here's what I would want clarification on. So you got this Eightfold Path, and they're virtues, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on these virtues, and if you fulfill all 8 perfectly, you will achieve nirvana. Can you do that in this life? Because there's this whole reincarnation thing too, right?
Yes. So yes, and Theravada would say most likely you're not going to do it in this life, but we'll encourage you. We'll cheer you on. We'll teach you the ways, and then with each life that you have, then your chances will increase, and then you become closer and closer the more you practice in each life. So, mention reincarnation. If you happen to die before you attain this enlightenment, this separation from the world, from the physical bodies and mind and whatnot, when you just fade into nothingness, if you happen to die before then you will be reincarnated again. And when you're reincarnated, there's something that's taken into account, which is called karma. Karma is based on your actions and your thoughts as well too. So your intention, excuse me. So your thought was carried out in your intention. So you could do something nice with bad intentions, but that's bad karma. So you see, you do something good for the sake of I want to be praised because of doing a good job. You're actually getting bad karma.
Sure.
So intention's important too. So it's not just actions, and then this accumulates. And then when you're reincarnated, you will either be incarnated in a higher plane of existence, could meaning another human, but in a could say more privileged state. Maybe you were in a broken family in your first life, and then later, because of your development, then later maybe you're born into a happy family with many brothers and sisters. Or you could be born as a deity in the next life, or if you've been bad, you could end up in one of the hells. So, or an animal too.
And to my understanding, obviously it's from Hinduism. We all know Hinduism's version of reincarnation and karma and all that. I don't know which came first to the United States, the Buddhist understanding or the Hindu one, but the Hindu one came first. And historically, it was the first development of this whole idea of reincarnating and going up or down. To my understanding, the way karma works is that bad karma and good karma, like you're always burning through karma to meet neutral karma points. It's like in a point system. And so if you're in a life and you have bad karma from your previous life, you're going to get a lot of bad things happening to you. And every time a bad thing happens to you, it like burns away at some of that bad karma until you reach a neutral point. And the same goes for good. Like you can have done a lot of good and then things go well from you, but it burns down until you're at a neutral point. So you always have to you want to be adding to your point totals so that you can carry it over to the next life or gain from it in this life. So you can benefit from actions in this life that you did that are good, based on your karma, but it can also be from a past life. So it's kind of ambiguous whether or not, like if something bad, so if you're a practitioner of Buddhism and something bad happens to you, you can say, oh, clearly I'm not a sinner because I'm, just a good old saint or whatever they call the saints in Buddhism. But my past life must have done something terrible, and that's why, I got in a car accident and broke my leg. But usually when something good happens to you, you're like, that was this life's karma. That was me helping that old lady across the street thing, which, okay.
Yes. The Buddha does interestingly touch on that, and I'm starting to sound like a Buddhist. I'm not, for the record. You can slap me in the face if I do, but...
I will. If you start to sound like a Buddhist.
Thank you. That... you have to keep into account that there's other people in this world. So for bad stuff, yes, it's not necessarily just you, the one that does it, but it could be some evil person inflicting harm upon you. So it's all this relationship. But what do they see? Karma, they say it's a fact of life. The goal is, let's get out of that fact of life. Does that make sense? So karma is there.
But it's not a good or bad force.
It's just there.
It's how things are.
Yes. Obviously, it benefits you to get good karma, but it's going to keep repeating itself. Even if for hundreds of lives you keep getting good karma, okay, you're going to keep getting reborn in a nice state. But you're going to keep getting reborn. That's the point. You might keep climbing up in the heavens, but you will never make it to the beyond the top one. Because you'll keep getting reincarnated into that same if you're good. And also, the higher you climb, the easier it is to fall. So the harder to fall. So if you really screw up the higher planes, you can go way down to hell.
Yeah, and let's talk about those levels. So when Sebastian first told this to me, it was crazy. And this is when I suddenly realized, there's some theology to this. Of course, it's all mythology theology, but there is some theology to it. What's interesting about, so I'll give the brief and then maybe you give some of the details. It was interesting about the Buddhist worldview is that it's kind of nonsensical, like most mythology is, in that everything came from nothing, and there's not really a reason why anything happened, and nobody knows exactly when it might have happened or how, or there's no governing force. Like karma just is. It's like a law of physics that's sustained by nothing, which totally against the Christian worldview, which says everything is sustained by God and that God's the driving force behind everything and all that. But they say nothing is essentially the driving force. The karma just is, and beings just are. But what's interesting about their levels of heaven worldview is that every single living being, from plants to animals to humans to demons to deities, they all have a life force, and that when they live and die, their death puts them into another situation, like we were just saying with the karma, right? But just like karma, or unlike how karma always wants to hit neutral, the levels of heaven and hell are designed the opposite way, because life here on earth, physical random regular life with human beings and plants and animals, whatever, we all have relatively short lives, right? We live 100 years and then we die. Plant lives 1,000 years or however long plants might live, or 2 seconds or however long you are as a plant, and then they die. Cow lives I have no idea how long cows live, 30 years, and they die. But as you ascend into heaven, you start living longer and longer and longer, and so you will spend far more time, if you ascend, you'll spend far more time in the upper portions of your life than in earth. And the same goes for these hells.
Uh-huh.
If you do bad things and you descend below humanity, below life on Earth, I don't even understand. Okay, so like you scenario, okay, you're a clover because you just did terrible stuff. Okay, you like, you're Adolf Hitler himself. You get reincarnated as like a plant, like because it's a super low version of life. But then you like suck as a plant. Like you're just the worst, and so you're the worst clover ever. You suddenly get like sent, and now you're like a corporeal demon with like a consciousness, and like it seems like a really sudden shift. But in any case, get sent down to these hells. These hells also, just like the heavens, they are really long. Like the worse you get, the longer you're in those hells, and it's torturous and all that. But the way the time's set up, it encourages being either really long in the hell section or really long in the heaven section, and very shortly in this earth section. Whereas their karma is like always trying to get to the neutral. Their heaven hell setup is like always trying to get away from the neutral. That's just an interesting thing. Anyways, do you want to describe what this even is, what this layer cake of hells and heavens is?
Oh, I'd be more than happy to. It's the spicy stuff, and it's pretty wild. Obviously, people disagree on this because many of the names are mentioned casually by the Buddha, so it's not much to go on with.
Are we even going to go through the names? Okay, if you want,
let's not go through the names.
If you want just a dump of Pali language, you can go to Wikipedia and look up like the levels of Buddhism. And my gosh, it's like every single one has its own Buddhist name, its own Pali name.
Yes. So hell is Naraka or Niraya. In what you're gonna hear, at least from Buddhist channels, is Niraya because they follow Theravada most likely, and that would be hell. So there are 8 levels. There are 2 kinds of hell. There's a cold hells, and warm, hot hells. 8 in each. So, and also, if you're Hitler, you're probably gonna skip the clover part and just go straight to hell.
You think?
Yeah. I think if you're just a lame human, and you're a liar, you probably reincarnate as like a cow or like a clover, and then do a pretty bad job as a tree or a plant. Then probably you go to like the very top.
What constitutes a bad clover, a bad tree?
You didn't sprout on time. Yeah. You didn't produce any seeds. Bad plant right there.
Okay.
Throw into the fire with all the
weeping and gnashing of teeth.
Yes. And weeping and gnashing of teeth. There's gonna be a lot of that in these hells. So the cold ones, they are so cold you're just gonna get blisters all over. And obviously the worse your karma, just the longer you're gonna spend there. So for example, there's the blister hell, burst blister hell, shivering hell, lamentation. You can beat the Pali and the Chinese on your own. Chattering teeth hell, blue lotus hell, and the great lotus hell. And each time you can spend anywhere from some nice numbers here. They put the word here, put the work. 1.6 times 10 to the 16 years there. Millions upon millions on 6 of years there, just freezing to death. And then eventually you die, and then you've cleansed yourself. So think of it more as purgatory, because then you're reborn into, okay, I'm done with this hell, pun intended, and then you're reborn into a normal human or anywhere else, where you may be. As a plant, as an animal, you name it. The best ones are humans, rather than being reborn as an animal, because a human, you have consciousness, and thus you can practice Buddhism. Side note there. Then there's the warm hell, the hot hells. There's the black thread hell, the crushing hell, the screaming hell, the great screaming hell, the heating hell, the great heating hell, the uninterrupted hell. And in the worst one, you're being roasted in there's a gigantic flame all the time. And the fun. Should I throw in the statues?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yes. I'm gonna forget later too. See, some statuary in Buddhism, particularly in Mahayana Buddhism and Tibetan and also Chinese Buddhism, maybe Korean, and Japanese. Yes,
very
definitely
Japanese.
Japanese. Oh, yeah. You're gonna see some angry statues, with the poses they do, with the rings surrounding them, with their tongues coming out, and then like
fangs,
really angry
big cheeks.
Yes, pointy hats too.
Do they have pointy hats?
Yeah, they do have pointy hats, but you're gonna notice that they're either blue or red.
And can you guess which one is hot and cold? Oh my gosh. I was telling Sebastian when we were going through this. sorry to all the Buddhists out there that really take this seriously, but can you think of a more like adolescent religion where they've got like 10 cold hell or 8
eight, yeah.
cold hells, 8 hot hells, and that when you're in the hot hell you're red, and when you're in the cold hell you're blue? Oh my gosh, it's like juvenile. In any case, in Japan there's a really famous they like anime in Japan, if you know. There's really famous stores. They sell like a bunch of figurines for anime. You know, little guys are big things of anime characters. And looking at these statues, these Buddhist statues, they look like those anime things. And they sell them not in most anime shops, but like in similar style shops. And you can buy, you know, your favorite demons. Like, why are you buying a demon? Clearly not to pray to it.
Right.
It's just like for decoration. So it is just like an anime figure. It's like, you know, ancient anime figures.
And protection too. Or like, you know, because then they get good karma from protecting you.
The little statues?
Yeah.
Oh, so the demons like can interact with people on Earth then?
Yes. Like
Don't know how that works.
Oh,
like,
I don't.
They gotta go home to hell at the end of the day, but you know they get like a break time.
This would be great point, because so like how we think of in Christianity at least, and Islam, or even Judaism, any Western religion, I would say. Hell and earth are separate locations, whereas in Buddhism they overlap. So we could go up. I mean, according to Buddhism, we could go up to the first heaven right over earth by flying really high. We just would not see anybody there because they are invisible, can't be seen by the human eye.
They can't be touched either. I mean, it is a spirit realm. It's kind of like the real spirit realm.
Yes.
It's here, but it's not here.
But the point is that they're not in different locations. I mean, I understand that they might be in different locations, but they kind of overlap. That's what I'm trying to get at is, so you can't have interaction, whereas in Christianity you can't have interaction unless God permits it.
But see, here's what's weird. So the fact they actually give distances.
Oh yes.
If you want to share it, you can. They give distances, like exactly how far away these hells and these heavens are above the earth, because like you're saying, Sebastian, they're in the same plane of existence, as in like they're there physically, but they're like a different state of matter, you could say, because they're invisible and can't be touched. They can see themselves, and apparently they can see us, but we can't see them. Again, kind of like the spirit world as we know it in Christianity, right? Demons and angels are interacting here on earth, on our plane, but in the spirit realm, however you want to say that, we can't see them on the regular basis. We can't touch them or get slapped by them. But we can be affected by them, right? And heaven probably is similarly, on a different plane in Christianity as well. Or obviously, it's on a different plane, but we don't know a lot about heaven, to be frank, in Christianity, just that it's separate and above us.
Mm-hmm. No, it's a fair point. And yes, as you were touching on the yojanas, which used to be like cubits. We don't use cubits anymore, but this was used in ancient India. It's about 13 kilometers, yojana. So then there's some numbers there's several layers of heaven, different heavenly realms. One of them, for example, is 5,580,000 yojanas. Yes, above. So who measured this? I'm not quite sure. As I said, the Buddha just casually mentioned these in some of the lessons in the Tripitaka, in the Pali Canon. So my assumption is that these numbers were created much later.
Sure.
So yes, so you could technically fly a rocket ship up to some of the heavens, but
well, you wouldn't see anything, would you?
But you just wouldn't see anything. Yeah.
But the problem is, okay, so maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves because we haven't explained all the Buddhism yet. But problem is, like, if you have a demon in hell or even a deity in heaven, for them to come to Earth, they have to like zoom, like on their commute car to get that 500 million whatever yojanas over here. They're out of the hell then, aren't they? Or they're out of the heaven. Like, they're no longer suffering the blistering cold. They're like, living it up in Bengal.
Michael, that's a great question to ask.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if anyone has the answer to that.
Once again, we're going to touch on this in the end of the episode, but I think it's kind of obvious to anybody who's listening. The reason that Americans don't typically, and the West in general doesn't typically hold very seriously to Buddhism, if you're a Buddhist, is because this is what serious Buddhism is, and it doesn't hold up to argument, because it is so obviously concocted by different disparate beliefs that they combined into
Uh-huh.
one that they don't actually work. So the whole demons interacting with people is from, I think, from experience of like experiencing real spirit beings here
Uh-huh.
that do exist. And so that's an obvious, that's true. But then they also have this thing like they're super far away that, Buddha or somebody else concocted. And they just slam them together like, yep, both are true in the same way, but they can't be. They don't work together. You can't have demons that are interacting with people, and they're also 500 million, eons away.
Right. So yeah, we'll on the secular Buddhists, it would hold, that many of these things were clearly grabbed on from previous religions like Jainism or Hinduism, or even other stuff from Nepal, whatever. So that would be the view. But for practical practice in Buddhists, I don't know if they're as depending on how seriously they take this, this would be part of their belief system. So
yeah,
all this heaven and hells. Let's continue though with the other principles of Buddhism. So this is again the traditional, the practicing Buddhism. You might have heard of the Four Noble Truths, which are observations that the Buddha made of reality. So dukkha, again, Pali, but that's just what it is. You just have to take it. It means suffering or unsatisfaction. I say would be a better translation. And I'll just say the English. Craving, desire, and cessation, and then the Eightfold Path, the path, Magga. So these are things that Buddha observed in reality, so that life is unsatisfactory, no matter how much money you have.
Number one.
Yeah, no matter how much money you have, no matter how much kinky time you have, it's never enough. No matter how much food you eat, it's never enough. You just want more. You're gonna be gluttonous. No matter how many cars you hoard, never gonna have enough cars.
And
so
boy, did Siddhartha hoard a lot of cars, man. He's a car aficionado.
Yeah.
No cars. There was no cars.
More like carts.
Cards. He's got Apple cards, Mango cards, every card.
Toyota carts. Yeah.
So that's number one. Number one is that life is suffering, right? We've all heard that one.
And then the second one is craving, that desire, that we desire things. So, so it's like a cycle. It feeds on itself. That you just want to have more things. You just want to have more happiness. You just want to have more satisfaction. You just want to have more peace. Craving. And then the cessation, meaning like let go of desire, let go of craving, let go of this, to stop the suffering, because you're unhappy because of your desire. So the conclusion that says, okay, let's stop wanting stuff, and then finally, that's the path, the truth, the way. I am the way, the truth, and the light, said Buddha. Just kidding. He did not say that. No, he did not.
Jesus said that. Yeah.
And
Buddha copies a lot of Jesus stuff, though he came before, but he didn't copy that.
Yes. And some New Agers would hold Jesus went to Tibet
to learn all the good old Buddhism.
All the ways, yes. Yeah. So but you see, right? The four.
And those four things, I mean, they're a logical step. That's what, even Western Buddhists, that's what you'll know about Buddhism. Put aside all the weird demon stuff and a lot of the other practices of Buddhism that they do in the East, like all the mysticism stuff they do. Typically, the raw, just the basics Buddhism that you'll see here is just the noble truths. That is, that life is suffering. Suffering is caused by desire. You must let go of desire to be saved. Here's the way to do it: the Eightfold Path.
There you go. And that's the similarity. So the Eightfold Path, and then as you mentioned, the Noble Truths, the observations of reality, and obviously karma. I mean, actually, no, take that back. Karma, not shared by everyone, so take that back. Those are the two places of common. One place that I would say is a good starting point to look into if you're interested in learning more about Buddhism and actually reading quotes from the Buddha, I would say is the Tripitaka. Tripitaka means the three baskets in Sanskrit, and Tripitaka in Pali. Three collections in this ones. Rules for monks, number one. So how they should live, how they should do stuff. As I was an example would be that they should never rely on the land for income. At least in Theravada, in Thai, in that area, in their way of life, monks should not be living off the land. They should always rely on almsgiving, on charity. A rule, for example. Also, you have to shave your head. Generic stuff like that. So think of Leviticus, just some instructions.
Nazarites, but don't they also have to wear orange robes? Isn't that a thing for Theravadis?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
sure.
So not like
the
Nazarites.
Yes, not like Leviticus, quite. Yeah, but nonetheless, the instructions are there. Then after that, you're gonna have the suttas or sutra in Sanskrit. Sutra, probably we mentioned those in the Hinduism channel. That just means teachings. So it's gonna be a lot of recollections from the Buddha, his teachings, and it's mostly narrated similar to the Gospels, and could be the Anointed One, I suppose. A translation, the Enlightened One, was wandering into, just say Bengal, and he encountered this person, and then they talked about this, and then the dialogue goes off. So that's the style of narrations of the sutras, and then sometimes it's just like the Sermon on the Mount. It's just the Buddha giving speeches and lessons to his bhikkhus, his disciples, and then the last one is the Abhidhamma, which is just the philosophy, insightful, maybe some quotes. So that is the Pali Canon, Tripitaka, the Tipitaka. And that would be, I would say, a good starting point if you want to understand Buddhist doctrine. As I said, the Pali, the Theravada, who hold the Pali as very important. They're the most theological, and they do take their stuff more seriously, I would say.
Yeah, and it is terribly painful. Sebastian has read me some of the stuff from that book, these teachings, and it is, as you might imagine, if you ever run into Buddhist philosophy, we've kind of given it the good schmear here of like exactly what it is and the Four Noble Truths and all that. But those Four Noble Truths aren't like laid out in a dictionary. It's not laid out in a nice bullet form in the gospel. That's that's the benefit we're giving you all. It is highly repetitive, nonsensical, like you hear New Age people describing the ways the universe works, like it's a circle within a circle, man. There's the Lucifer principle weaving through reality, dude. And you're like, I don't know what you're talking about, dude. Nothing you're saying is making sense. That's kind of how Buddhism is taught in their books.
Which I think is a shame. My goodness, like at least for the beginning, when the Buddha is debating with another monk of the origins of the universe, and actually with Brahmins, with Hindu teachers. Oh my goodness, every single new sentence that he makes, he just repeats the same introduction from the 5 sentences he just said before. It's like, I find it similar to Mormonism. And so it came to pass that. And so it came to pass that. Yeah. I'm like, please, calm down.
Again, maybe it's like a style, like when he was riffing, like he's making up stuff. He's got to pad his time, because that's what it sounds like to me.
No, but he's like a paragraph. Like I don't have time to remember word by word 5 times the same paragraph that I've been saying. So anyway, a shame. But yes, so thankfully over thousands of years, 2,000 years, someone had the decency to sit down and study and recollect this so that we can narrow this down as the four truths, and then also the Eightfold Path, which is scattered throughout all the suttas given by the Buddha. So thank you for whoever read through that.
And you can see it takes a lot. I mean, we're already at 50 minutes. This is...
Oh my goodness.
It's a lot. And that's why it's painful. I wouldn't recommend it. Sebastian's saying he recommends it. I'm like, don't even do it. Just listen to this episode and go straight to straight back to Christianity. Mm-hmm. So let's wrap up with organized Buddhism. There are 3 major schools.
Yes.
Right? Just like in Christianity, there's, not that we agree with these people, but the Catholics and Mormons, you could say people that aren't related. Those are pretty different from each other. Like Catholicism differs in core gospel tenets from Protestantism, and same with Mormonism and other ones. We would call those sects because they diverge. They don't like each other. They believe the others are heretics. However, these 3 sects in Buddhism probably shouldn't be called sects. They should just be called schools, because they don't really have animosity towards each other, and they honestly only differ in like the things they do versus their core beliefs.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Yes, exactly. So I'll just cruise right through them. Mentioned already the names: Mahayana, Theravada, and I think Vajrayana, I think I mentioned Vajrayana, but easiest one to recognize Vajrayana, those are the Tibetans. The Dalai Lama is the main leaders. Like you could think of him like a pope, more like a patriarch, I suppose, like in Eastern Orthodoxy. And Theravada, those are the people in Thailand, Cambodia, and
bright orange.
They shave their heads, yes.
Yeah, Tibetans shave their heads too, and they sometimes wear bright colors, but the Theravadas also do that. So it's kind of confusing. All right.
Yes, you just have to ask them, what are you? And then you know, yes, they do share a common vestment. And then Mahayana, technically Vajrayana, the Tibetans technically are Mahayana. Too complicated. We're not going to get into that. Chinese, Koreans, and maybe some Japanese schools are considered Mahayana. So, and Mongolians are Vajrayana, so they follow the Dalai Lama, the Mongolians.
But if we had to describe each in like two tenets, what would it be?
Yes, I got it. So, Theravada is like Catholicism and Scholasticism in the Middle Ages. Mahayana is like Eastern Orthodoxy, in which like contemplation, sensation, feeling good, and all of that stuff. How's that good for an analogy?
The hippies, yeah. And what about the... so we got Theravada is like the scholarly monks that like actually thought through this stuff. Thank goodness. I mean, it's all nonsense. Mahayanas are like the middle ground between the learning people and like hippie. Okay, maybe. And then the Vajrayanas, if I'm saying all this right, are the Tibetans, and they're like
Montanists, charismatics.
The charismatics. They're the ones that do a lot of the heavy, hardcore meditation and like the extreme feats of fasting and like possession. And also martial arts.
Yes. And it's also Zen, but Zen is also its own thing. We could do a stuff on Shintoism and Zen at some other time, maybe,
sure.
But we'll save that for later. But yes, that's essentially the core of it. So if you want an intro on Buddhism, Theravada, definitely the way to go. Take it easy, because there's a lot of wild stuff there too. But they are organized, they like learning, they focus on practice, so they dedicate your life to it. Even as a layperson, you can go to a monastery and actually... Okay, maybe you can't just walk in there, but you can, learn from the monks and then be enlightened that way. They say it's probably could take some time. You could do it in this life, but it might take a couple of lives. In Mahayana, it's more on daily devotion, so more humble, and also focus more on kindness rather than on practice, on theology. So it's more on the experience, I would say. And I think that's a pretty fair way of putting it. I think they would agree, more the experience side. Mahayana, Vajrayana, unlike Theravada, they do hold that saints interact with humans. Those are the bodhisattvas. Those are the devas. Mm-hmm. Some of them are sassy.
Gotta have a sassy diva every once in a while. Uh-huh.
Yes, and then the Vajrayana, they are the ones who really pray into. They use statues. Be fair. You can say whatever. You can take it as you wish. They use the statues as aid to combat evil or sway temptation and get away from temptation or whatnot. So like as enhancement. So they're the ones who you see statues. But Mahayana, most likely Vajrayana, like Tibetan Buddhists. And the Tibetans, they're the hardcore. They are the ones who dedicate their lives to, I suppose they all dedicate their lives. They're the hardcore ones, I would say. And I think the Dalai Lama would agree with me, less doctrinal. I'm going to throw it out there. Definitely less doctrinal.
They are. And with just some base research, by the way, Dalai Lama is pretty famous for being the voice of Tibet while Tibet's taken over by China. That's really why he's famous. He's a teacher that's supposedly the 14th reincarnation of the same dude, the same like teacher man. And every time he dies, every time the Dalai Lama position dies, they look for a new one, and like they throw some smoke up in the air, and they do a double backflip, and they're like, "Oh, where is he?" And then they find a kid, and they're like, "Here he is," and then they raise him up. So that's what happened to this Dalai Lama, like happened to many Dalai Lamas before, and it just so happened that China was invading at the time, so he couldn't resist them, as Tibetans had done before, and he had to flee, and now he's a famous dude. But the Dalai Lama, this guy, I don't know his actual name. I'm forgetting his actual name. He is, like Sebastian saying, not particularly serious, much more like of a liberal, kind of like the current Pope. He's kind of like whatever. Like he's obviously very pro-Tibet, very political. Kind of ironic considering they're Buddhist.
He's wanting to free Tibet. You shouldn't want to do anything in this world.
Yeah, so like, yeah, not really Buddhist there, but whatever. He's said comments like, which should remind you of kind of more liberal Christians, of saying, for example, Vajrayana has a really strict what men can do and what women can do. It turned into like a feudal lord situation where monks took over towns and enslaved women and children. Good stuff. And because of that, there's like some gender tensions, as you might imagine, of these male monks like forcing women to be their slaves, sex slaves, and again, Buddhist sex slave, whatever. But they did it, hypocrisy and all. And so women now like want to be monks and whatever. And the Dalai Lama said, if the Buddha was here today, he'd probably teach things different than he did back then. So he admits that the Buddhist teachings actually do support this male hierarchy. But he says it doesn't, shrug. It doesn't really matter. He'd do it differently today, which tells you that he's not very serious. He's really a political figure.
Yes. And I also got the same experience from this three-hour discourse from this Bhutanese monk in Germany. They have a Buddhist gathering, like world gathering they had in Germany. I listened through that whole conference.
Wow. Dedication.
Yes, indeed. So, yeah, it's pretty much the same as the Dalai Lama. Is like, yeah, you can ditch the doctrine like those weirdos in Tibet over there or in Thailand. Let's just focus on being nice and squish each other's cheeks.
Yes. Okay. So this is going to be a long episode just regardless.
Yeah, let's just keep it.
Really two things. So I think that all what we just discussed is the root of Buddhism. And if you have a friend who's Buddhist, I think it could be profitable to, in part of sharing the gospel, I say share the gospel first, really. But if he's getting into defending Buddhism hardcore, if you reveal this space to him, they're probably going to be off-put, because American Buddhists typically don't sign up for the 8 hells, 8 hot hells, 8 cold hells, and the anime figures and the spirits and this million heavens and all that type of stuff. They that's not what they signed up for. It sounds
and leaving your body.
Yeah, it sounds too stupid because they picked Buddhism to be different and cool and edgy and smart because they're not a Christian. They're different. They just believe in being good, man. Atheism rocks. But if this is revealed to the core, I mean, they either have to ignore it, which is everybody knows that's dumb, even the person doing it, or they say, oh, that's my base, so I'm going to pick a different religion. So if you meet a real Buddhist, I mean, these are obviously things to know too, but you just don't usually meet them here. All that being said, let's talk about American Buddhism, is what I would call it. Secular Buddhism. I know, Sebastian, you have been watching like a secular Buddhist channel for like 20 of the 40 hours you've done research on when you're not watching a whole Buddhist conference or whatever you've been doing here. I, meanwhile, I'm just like, eating potato chips and trying to read through the Wikipedia and pronounce all the Hindi words or Pali words. But the secular Buddhism is really what probably our viewer was asking about. And we're saving it towards the end of this episode because it should be pretty simple. I'll explain what I know about secular Buddhism, and then you
giving it away, Michael.
Go for 20 minutes. Yeah. Well, my summary of secular Buddhism is that some when America started to become more atheist, right? Everybody knows that the soul longs for spirituality because we're meant to worship God. We're built in the image of God, made in the image of God, meant to worship God. And so if we're not worshiping God, in fact, if we're rejecting and pushing down his truth, we're going to be constantly fighting against truth. We want to fill it with something, even if it's falsehood. So secularism has created a great need, a great emptiness in America for those who turn to it for something. That's why New Age started to pick up and secularism became big, and all this like weird mystical stuff. A lot of that mystical stuff came from the East, came from Buddhism, came from Hinduism. But I'd say it is different. It's enough different. It's weird enough that we put it in its own category. We've talked about spirit science in episode 20, I think, of this podcast. So if you really want to go into New Age, might do episodes on it in the future, but you can go look at episode 20. However, Buddhism came up too because it's less embarrassing, I think, for the practitioners than like New Age can be, because New Age, like, you whip out crystals and people start getting weirded out. But Buddhism is at least something they practice in the East, so it's still edgy and it's not Christian, but
no time traveling Jews.
There's no time traveling Jews, or again, healing crystals, or conscious donkeys or stuff like that. But that doesn't make any sense. Conscious rocks speaking to you or anything like that. But it's of the same vein, I would say. The same reason people turn to New Age, they turn to Buddhism, and therefore it's not particularly serious. It's really a reaction against feeling bad because you're secularist and wanting an excuse on why you're not a Christian, because Christianity is obviously the dominant religion in the United States, even to today. And so for those who don't like Christianity, they're burned by it, or they think it's not cool because their parents were Christian, or their teachers Christian or something like that, they decided, okay, I'm gonna pick a different religion, but I still like the nice parts of Christianity, like love your neighbors, you love yourself, that there's a heaven one day, that type of stuff, that there's eternal life. So I'm gonna choose a religion that has those things. And so they turn to Buddhism just to have a foundation for doing good. So they just grab Buddhism as an excuse, I think, to keep some Christian tenets, so the good ones that they like, and they don't take all the rest of the baggage that Buddhism has. And so it's really a baseless belief. It's just an excuse for why they still hold the Christian morals, I think. So it's really atheism with Buddhist syncretism in it, as opposed to Buddhism with atheism, tacked on the end. It's really atheism with Buddhism, tapped on the side.
Yeah, Buddhism with a little bit of atheism, that would be Theravada, pretty much, yes. Yeah. So, yeah, as you're beautifully put, it's just holding on to the very basic foundations of the practice. So not the theology, not the eschatology, not the cosmology. Oh, for eschatology too. There's going to be a new Buddha coming up in the future. He's going to be gigantic, and he's going to save us from our wickedness.
Yeah. We're going to get sidetracked here. There's a lot of things to talk about on Buddhism, but it is interesting. I mentioned it was created by toddlers of just like slamming things they found together, funny that it doesn't get that reputation, but it really is. It's like the worst offender I've seen of that. They have a Messiah coming at some point, and maybe like in a million years, because they've got these crazy time spans, but he's going to retell the world about Buddhism, and the whole world is going to be Buddhist, kind of like post-millennialism, except with no Jesus and a bunch of Buddha in it. And this Buddha, he's not Siddhartha, and he's not the fat Buddha guy. He's some other guy, he's some Messiah guy, and he's currently in the deity sphere, but he's going to come down to earth and teach everybody, and everybody's going to be awed. He's going to, everybody's going to see him. Every mountain will be leveled, and every valley will be raised, and they'll all see him. It's just a Messiah complex. I'm sure it was tacked on post-Christian Messiah. I'm almost guarantee it. But the guy is like 30 feet tall, because apparently as you ascend, you get taller.
Yes.
I think as you descend, you get smaller. That's why they're like little imp demons. But as you ascend, you get taller. So, in fact, if you've ever seen some Chinese and Indian, and even in Southeast Asia, statues of Buddhas, sometimes they make them small, like a normal statue, but often they have got like huge statues.
Like 30 meters. Type statues.
I don't know what a meter is. Like really tall, really tall, like a whole cliffside. They've carved a Buddha, like the tallest.
5 stories, probably 4 or 5 story.
Yeah,
size.
Even bigger. I mean, the tallest freestanding statue in the world for a long time was the Statue of Liberty, but it's been overtaken by several statues, not only in India but also China. So they're huge. They're huge, bigger than the Statue of Liberty.
Yes. So that's why sometimes in Hinduism too, the gods are gigantic and then the humans are tiny. So. Yeah. They say the higher you are, the bigger you are.
And yet they're trying to escape, or like it just doesn't make any sense. Like they wanted the Messiah thing. They're like, oh, that sounds cool. Jesus coming again. Let's make one of those. But real salvation comes from reaching nirvana, right? And like not caring about anything anymore. So first of all, why is the Messiah coming back? Like why does he even care about people? If he's a god, he should be like less and less caring about the world at all. He should have no desires. So why does he have such a strong desire that there's a prophecy that he's going to come back and put in the effort to help mortals? So he just wouldn't. If it was true, he wouldn't do it. It's mixed messaging. And why do we even need this Messiah? Like why is this even a thing? We'll talk about it in the epistemology, but the core problem with religions like Buddhism, and there are many like it, is that all of the knowledge that's supposedly gained isn't from history. It's not from a long line of tradition. It's obviously written, some of it's tradition, but it was all gleaned from inward-looking meditation. And that's one of Buddha's core teachings, is look first yourself.
That's a great transition into the core tenets that people hold on to nowadays in the U.S.
Yeah, in the U.S.
Yeah, so that would be exactly, yes. Just this is surface, so like the introduction. And they would share in common, they're called Brahma Viharas. They're like the abodes of Brahma. Brahma is the deity that spoke with Buddha and told him, okay, no, don't just be a sad loner. Go out and teach people. Again, why is he coming down here? So Mahayanas would say that it is good to be a saint and then stay on earth, not just leave the plane of existence, because it's good to be nice to other people. So that's part of why some devas come down and it's like, okay, you know what? We're more enlightened than these clowns. Let's teach these clowns.
Get some frequent flyer miles, get some more karma, boost up.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas the Theravada is like, nope, I'm out of here, man. Nope, see ya. So you're on your own, pal. So anyway, I'm embellishing here a little bit. The Brahma Viharas, these are most likely, and this, don't hate me, Michael. I have done some meditation, to see what it is like.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm ready to take you out. Don't worry about it.
He's already stabbing me with his stare. So, okay. Main ones: loving kindness, compassion, and joy and equanimity. Those are the main practices of it you do to get introduced into what are called the jhana. Jhana is a more intense meditation. So you would do in Tibet, for example, that you just eventually you forget where you are, and then only your existence. That's the fourth level jhana, that is separate from these four. So it's four, and then there's another four, and then only your existence makes you realize, oh, I'm alive. And then you wake up from your meditative state. So that's the ultimate goal. Anyway, we'll talk about the problems with...
I think I get in that state every night, Sebastian. Going to sleep. Stupid! Ah! Okay, that's enough.
Anyway, these are what most... I don't want to say yoga studios, but at least, when you do meditation, even if it's in yoga class or whatever it may be, if you're practicing this, most likely they're going to introduce these concepts, not bluntly, obviously saying they're Buddhist. They're very, it's just a subtle introduction. Loving kindness, that's the main one. Let's focus on that one, okay? And then I want to hear your thoughts. Loving kindness, the idea, in one of the suttas, so again, scrambled, this is compiled after the fact. The Buddha spoke with the wife of a king, so the queen of a certain kingdom in India, and then he asked her, what do you love the most? So then the writer says, we would expect her to have said the king, because her husband,
but then standing right behind her.
Right, but she said, no, myself. And then the Buddha uses this as a lesson to teach that a truth is that you're going to love yourself most in this life, which is something that I would, it's consistent with Christian teaching that as a fallen people, we're gonna love ourselves more over something or someone else. Put a hold on that. So Buddha says, for this practice meditation, if you encounter this, what the teacher is going to say is, when you meditate, you breathe in positive phrases, and then you can exhale. For example, you can exhale positive thoughts towards your loved ones, towards your enemies. Ideally, the Buddha said, practice preaching, thinking love towards your enemies. That's a good way of releasing anger and hatred. So loving kindness, and then then you want to start with loving yourself, because that's what everyone does in the world. You love yourself the most. Focus on that. By focusing on love, wishing yourself good things, then as a consequence, Buddha says, you're going to start loving others and displaying that love outward. So in, out. That's the...
You want to be generous? Just focus on your greed. Focus on your hate, Anakin. Use it. Gosh. Disgusting. Yep. Okay.
Okay, great.
Just the comments in the peanut gallery over here.
All right. I'm just a messenger. Don't shoot the messenger. Anyway, so that would be something that at least secular Buddhists would do. They would start focusing on this. Why? Because it's nice. It's nice to wish good things upon yourself. It is nice to think positive thoughts. It feels good. I'm not going to deny it. I think anyone's going to say, okay, wishing your mom, I hope you're well. I hope you're free from harm. That's also a repetition, like free from harm. It's part of Buddhist thinking. It's nice. Probably feels good to be nice to people. So obviously something you want to hold on to. Compassion, that would be reducing harm towards others. So obviously right living, you don't want to be mean to people. You don't want to hate anybody. Being empathetic. So displaying joy, getting joy from seeing others' happiness, others' peace. You want to rejoice in this. You want to have positive thoughts. Again, most secular people, what in many of their belief systems, I want to be happy. I want to spread good vibes. Good vibes. I want to give good vibes to people. Buddhism says, okay, let's give good vibes to people. Okay, great. It seems thus far checklist. Yeah. So. Mm-hmm. And then finally, this one, not many people practice it, equanimity, which is just simply just pretty much just keeping a poker face in all situations. That's my embellishment of it. And ironically, the Buddha says, do not be too equanimous. even though equanimity is a goal. There were some
Balancing all things.
yes. There was a story in one of the suttas that says that there were some monks that in a place, monastery, or whatever it may have been, and then there was this other monk who was near death. He clearly hadn't bathed because he couldn't walk, he couldn't move, and then the monks were just like sitting there, like poker face. It's like, what are you doing? Why aren't you helping this man? It's like, oh, sorry, we're meditating. It's like, he says, yeah, no, you don't do that. So clearly you can be too equanimous. That's probably the least popular one that for people to even latch onto. They probably want to stay in the lower levels of meditation and practice. That's the nice feeling stuff. So, but if you want to be an actual Buddhist, you do want to reach that level of indifference towards. And not indifference in like, oh, I couldn't care less about that. It's just, it doesn't affect you emotionally. So not very, not good marketing, I would say, in that sense.
What's odd to me about secular Buddhism, maybe it's not odd, but it's odd, it's not consistent, is that they'll openly say they don't believe that it's real. Essentially, right? They don't believe that
yes.
Some of them don't even think Buddha existed. They don't believe in the spirits, of course. They don't believe in the hells. Some of them don't even believe in reincarnation here, right?
Yeah.
So totally, upfront about the fact that they're just making an excuse for being nice. It's just a philosophy they've chosen because they're like, oh, that sounds good. It's kind of what I believe already, so I'm gonna stick to it because I need some sort of solid ground that's not just my armpit for saying why I'm nice to people, an excuse of when people ask me, why are you good? And I would normally implode, like a robot when he's asked, this statement is a lie or whatever, that he needs an excuse. So he looks to Buddhism. But because the soul is naturally looking for a religion, right? And they've used this philosophy, that they're trying to secularize it into just a Buddhist philosophy. The soul naturally is gnawing at it, trying to see if it's, is this spiritual food, and is gnawing all over it. So even secular atheists that go into Buddhism, that are trying to keep it in its box, right? This is just a philosophy. It's not real. Their soul starts nibbling at it, and they start buying things. It's pretty common for them to start buying the reincarnation stuff. It's pretty common for them to believe karma starts seeping in, they genuinely believe in karma. And it's super common, I think, because they practice meditation, to start believing in not spirits like this guy's name is Fred and he mows my lawn spiritually on Wednesdays, not like a new age would be, but that the universe is conscious and that it tells you things. Somehow the secular atheist, which is supposed to be a worshiper of rationalism, right, becomes completely irrational when they dive into this. Again, because I think their soul is hungry. They can't, it's very hard to not start eating some of the spiritual things of Buddhism when you decide to secularize it.
The main one that's easiest to grasp after doing this is reincarnation, like karma. You might, many cases, they think that, probably Brahma never spoke to Buddha. Maybe that's just, his imagination. I'm like, okay, isn't that the core doctrine?
Maybe you shouldn't believe it?
Yeah, so it's a problem. There's a problem there. But then once you get into these practices, I wouldn't really call it a cult. It's just simply a faith system that once you're drawn in, then you start swallowing up more stuff that wasn't made known to you from the start. Like, for example, the funniest ones are the hells in this case.
Yes.
Or how the earth is laid up flat. The earth is flat, and then all these heavens rise up until the emptiness that's above and beyond. So it is easy to swallow more little bits and pieces, primarily by doing the stuff that makes you feel good. I was like, oh, okay, this is pretty nice. Maybe, this is, Buddha has said some true things, that life is suffering. Okay, so if he's right about that, what if he's right about reincarnation? Also, they would say, karma is truly a good justice system. So it seems fair. I think humans crave for fairness, so that's something we can touch on too. That the observation of karma, that's better than any other religion. So, okay, then Buddhism might be real. Let's go. Take me up to all the 13 heavens, please.
Well, I don't know about you, Sebastian, but I'm hungering for some rebuttal and
Please.
actual Bible stuff here. So let's talk. So we've gone way overboard on describing like organized Buddhism. Now we describe secular Buddhism. How are we going to react? You have a friend, he's Buddhist, or he's thinking about Buddhism, or he's adopting Buddhist concepts. I've got two main qualms with Buddhism. You could talk about the historicity of it and the fact that it's absolutely insane. It was pulled out of Buddhist butt. You can go to that line of attack, but to be honest, just like when people attack Christianity on historical lines, like me and you will defend it.
Mm-hmm.
But even us, and especially everyday Christians, it doesn't really shake the faith, because we're kind of like, you know, screw you. Like, I don't care. That's kind of what a Buddhist is going to tell you. Screw you. I don't care about the historicity of Buddhism. They didn't pick it for its historicity anyways. I wouldn't even go that direction. I have two main problems with Buddhism from a God standpoint, and then we'll talk about how you actually attack it.
Mm-hmm.
Buddha has two observations that are true, and I think kind of Buddhism in general has some true observations that draw people in. They're like, oh, that's true. For example, the whole you love yourself thing. Yeah, true observation. People love themselves, and so people are like, oh, yeah, you're right. We love ourselves so, and his therefore, his consequence of what we should do because we love ourselves is what the problem is. He says we love ourselves, and it's from love for ourselves that we can love others, and therefore we must first focus on understanding and loving ourselves to be able to serve others more. But you hear that, by the way, it's a philosophy that reaches way past Buddhism here in the States. It's on tweets all the time. It's on celebrities' mouths. It's on school teachers' mouths. It's on my boss's mouth. Like, it's everywhere. And I don't just mean boss, I mean like it's everywhere in the workplace. It's everywhere. That first I've got to love my boss. First you gotta treat yourself. Parks and Rec, treat yourself. You gotta take care of yourself first, and then you can take care of others. While that can be true in circumstances, it is never a blanket rule. I would never apply that as a blanket rule in life, because it really is just selfishness at the core. It's an excuse for selfishness. Yes, there are times like where you fell off your scooter and you're bleeding, and maybe like an old lady got hit by a bus behind you, but you're like unconscious on the ground, that, you do need help before you can help the old lady who just got hit by a bus. That's not typically our scenario. Typically the scenario is like, oh, I've got a case of the Mondays. I could volunteer at the food bank or whatever you were going to do. But I just got to get a pedi, I just got to get a mani pedi, take care of myself. It's just selfishness. It's just an excuse for selfishness.
Uh-huh.
And the same goes for like people that are depressed often will say these days, like, oh, I have to learn to love myself. Every single human being on earth, I guarantee it, loves themselves. The one that's depressed loves himself more than anybody else. That's why he's so upset that he's depressed. He's so upset that he's sad. He's self-obsessed. It's a problem with selfishness to be depressed, I think.
Now we're talking.
So the solution, whatever his name is, Gautama, that's an anime character. What's his name? Siddhartha.
Sid the kid. We'll call him Sid.
Whatever.
Sid.
The Buddha, the guy. His solution, his observation is correct. People love themselves, and some of his principles, right? Like, out of love for ourselves, we can love others. Whenever you've heard that one before, that's from the laws, from Deuteronomy, right? Love your neighbor as you love yourself. But the application is not go and love yourself more. That is not the application. We already do that far more than enough. That's in fact a sin problem in us and humans, is that we love ourselves too much, right? That's where we get sin. We think we are the judge of what's good and wrong. We want what we want, and we don't give to others. The number one rule from God's law is love the Lord God with all your heart, soul, and strength. And that should be where you get your affirmation. That's how you get out of depression. It's looking to the Lord. And that's to be the thing you meditate on day and night, is how great the Lord is, and looking to somebody other than yourself, the great one. Not a human, but the greatest one that there is, God. And then after the primary love, which is for God, right, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength, then love your neighbors as yourself. But that assumption, that law there assumes you already love yourself, because that's the way God designed you. Nobody doesn't love themselves. However much they say, oh, I just don't love myself. I don't know, it's self-esteem. It's a lie. Everybody loves themselves. They might not think they can do things. They might be like pessimistic, but that doesn't mean that they don't love themselves. So that's number one problem that I have with the Buddha. Number two is his life is meaningless, right? Nothing satisfies. true observation. In fact, if you ever read the Bible, Ecclesiastes, again, pre-Buddha, okay, if you want to go timelines here, people are obsessed. If you hadn't meant that, I'm going to go on a side note. If you notice that atheists are obsessed with like, oh, Christ didn't say it first, Buddha said it first. Oh my gosh, talk about retardation. I think that they might need to, of course I don't believe in the Bible anyways, but they might need to fact check the fact that Christ is referencing the Old Testament, which comes before Buddha. So eat it. Anyways, Ecclesiastes comes before Buddha. And I'll just read it because it's straight up the same conclusion that Buddha has, same observation that Buddha has, totally different conclusion.
Uh-huh.
It says in Ecclesiastes 12, what shall we conclude then? He's gone to, this is Ecclesiastes, of course, is Solomon. He's done everything. He's eaten every food, drunken every drink, had as many women as he wants, been wealthy, been famous, had a lot of fun.
Uh-huh.
He says, what then should we conclude then? Do we have any advantage? Not at all. We have already made the... I'm reading Romans. Hold on. I'm getting way ahead of myself. Okay. It says, remember your Creator in the days of your youth. This is Ecclesiastes. Before the days of trouble come and the years approach when you will say, I find no pleasure in them. Before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars grow dark and the clouds return after the rain. I'll skip down. Not only... I'm going to find a good place here. Remember him, the Lord, before the silver cord is severed and the golden bowl is broken, before the pitcher is shattered in the spring, the wheel is broken at the well. So before you die and everything's done. And the dust returns to the ground it came from. The spirit returns to God who gave it. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. That is Solomon. Everything is meaningless. So same conclusion that Buddha has, meaningless. But here is his response to that observation. Not only was the teacher wise, as Solomon, but he also imparted knowledge to the people. He pondered and searched out and set in order many proverbs. The teacher searched to find just the right words, and when he found the words that are upright and true, the words of the wise are like goads, like collected sayings, like firmly embedded nails, given by one shepherd. Be warned, my son, of anything in addition to them, of making of many books there is no end, and much study wearies the body. Which, side note, the amount of books that are in Hinduism and Buddhism, endless, and it's not like the Bible's big and it's a big book, but no, these books keep getting added to because knowledge keeps increasing in Buddhism. So kind of funny that here is Solomon telling you wisdom, quote unquote, will, writing of books will be no end, and study wearies the body. Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. So if all the, life is meaningless, says the teacher, everything is meaningless, the conclusion of that is to fear the Lord and his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. It's not only is it our duty to fear and obey God, but it's also good, because he's going to be the one to judge at the end, and there's consequence for this life. So while food and drink might ultimately be meaningless, whether you grow a massive empire or keep, a humble shack are meaningless, obeying God is not meaningless, and that's the biblical conclusion. But of course, Buddha's conclusion is everything is meaningless, so let's just off ourselves. Nirvana is just not existing.
Right.
Life sucks, so let's stop it. If that's not demonic, I don't know what is. Demons are constantly promoting suicide, and essentially, the goal of Buddhism is cosmic suicide, is stopping to exist.
Yes, and actually, I was going to say something on on Ecclesiastes of everything being pointless, but rather, let's just quickly throw it out there. In some cases, for some, let's say, yoga meditation retreats, people become suicidal after returning from those, because they are very Vajrayana in there, like, let's do it, guys, let's do all the intense rituals in which you just meditate for 8 hours straight, in which there's someone harassing or yelling things at you while you're meditating. Like, those are Vajrayana practices.
Right.
Getting, getting wasted sometimes, and then meditating to prove that alcohol doesn't affect you. So
give me your biggest rum just to prove that I don't need it. Yep.
Probably have heard of this isn't in Buddhist retreats, so I'm just making quick side notes for some Vajrayana rituals in which the monks would have sex to prove that pleasure doesn't affect them.
Only the hottest girls, though. Yeah.
And that way I'll prove that they have no power over me.
Yes.
So yeah, anyway, obviously not the drunkenness or the sex, we'll put those aside. I just wanted to throw them out there that they are part of the traditions. Such intensity, such a hammering down on the individual that abandon this life, abandon your identity of self. You are a construct of yourself. Another Buddhist idea the non-self, what you are as an individual, that idea of individuality is false, is incorrect. Get rid of it. Well, if you're just getting hammered that into your brain for a week or however you're there, clearly you're not going to return to the same person as you were before, especially if you can't have any contact with the outside world. Sometimes you can't even speak. You take vows of silence. Okay, you can't speak. You're doing some wild stuff in there. Not kinky stuff, probably just really intense. You're feeding into your head. Life, it's not an illusion, but it's not good. Let's get out of it. Well, what's the logical solution? Let's leave.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, yes, demonic. Before I forget, I wanted to touch on that it does have intense rituals like that. Meditation is not good in the end, I would say.
And ultimately, it's not harmless. So the advocate to any Christian that that you want to give people the way, the truth, the life. But Buddhism is not a happy alternative. It is an evil, demonic religion, but just like any other. As happy and as Christian-esque as the West tries to make it, even in the West, it can end up in at very core evil, demonic realities that affect people, real people in the United States. And even if you dress it up in the happiest way, any Buddhism is going to have nirvana at the end, right? And then trying to prevent desire. And that whole concept, that whole philosophy is suicidal. I mean, it is demonic. It's not godly. And therefore, what should our response be to a friend, or to a coworker, to a stranger in the street that is being influenced, that agrees with these Buddhist tenets, if not straight Buddhism itself?
For this, it will not bring you fulfillment. It is it's a void, empty belief system, because you're trying to bring, I would say my main takeaway from this has been, you're trying to bring goodness from yourself, and every human knows that we're not perfect. Even the Dalai Lama, or even Sid the Kid, would have said, in my current state, I am not, I understand he would say he reached perfection when he dies, and then he's in the afterlife, whatever. But he's still a human, not perfect. So, we all realize we're not perfect. So then, how can we as humans hope to bring perfection from us not being perfect? It doesn't make any sense. The system of Buddhism also, I would say, a big call for Westerners is that they think that Buddhism proposes a better system of justice. Every human likes justice. We all want to see, all movies have that theme. All stories have the same thing. The bad guy gets a justice served at the end, and the good guy is rewarded. It's just a human instinct. And then they would claim that Buddhism has the answer, that karma is the best way to do it, because do something good, great, you're rewarded in your next life. You do something bad, okay, you're gonna pay for it in your next one. Perfect justice system. But for that, though, I know you had some thoughts on karma, so let me pass.
Sure. Well, regardless, probably I'll say, just as an aside, and this might be super repetitive, and we'll skip through it because we've said it in a lot of our apologetics episodes. I think the number one thing you have to tell anybody, regardless of their belief, is you can do like a disarm, a quick parry of the fact that Buddhism is a hopeless religion, essentially, suicidal and has problems and is more spiritual than they think it is.
And then
you have to immediately parry with the gospel, and you go straight to conviction of sin. That the problem with Buddhism is that you aren't good inherently. You think you're good, and you think you're going to get goodness out of it, but you aren't. And that's why I even had Romans pulled up, by the way. Romans 3 is where it says, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. That is the truth. Whether the person believes in the Bible or not, I think we should bear the sword that is the word, and quote that kind of scripture to them. If not Romans 3, some other place in the Bible where it says, all men have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. The heart is desperately sick. Who can understand? There's a lot of scripture that you can go to tell the truth that we are in a fallen state. Right? You have to convict them of sin first, or reveal to them or remind them of their conviction of sin, because they're probably already convicted, because everybody is born knowing the truth but suppressing it. Right? That's Romans 1 there. So this person before you knows inherently that this system they're holding on to is lies, that they aren't perfect, they aren't naturally good. Now, they like to think they are, but internally they know they're rebelling against the living God. So go straight for sin is real. Anybody who has lied, murdered in their hearts, murdered in real life, lusted, all the sins, they are worthy of death. And there is a living God who will judge the living and the dead. It's not an inanimate force like karma. There is a real judge coming, and you must put the fear of God into them, or announce to them the fear of God, so they have the chance to become fearful of God, for the Spirit to work in them like that, and then give them the good news that for those who put their trust in Christ, their sins are paid for, and that they don't have to suffer the natural consequence of their sin
over and over and over
again. I mean, yeah, forever, right, in Christianity. And they can avoid that death by putting their trust in the real Buddha, which just means teacher, the real teacher, Jesus, and the Lord Almighty. So pivot straight into the gospel. I don't think you need to go into a lot of the things we did here. This is just useful for us in case, for that first parry, right, the first question they might bring up, or just to show that you understand their views, you want to have a decent background. But you always you want to present the gospel first, as opposed to getting into the details and debunking a lot of things. Karma. So if the pivot has to be on karma, and you said there's channels like the Secular Humanism or Secular Buddhism,
yes.
like you just adding to whatever I want in the end, Secular Buddhism channel, they said that karma is a superior form of justice.
Yes. So after watching for 20 plus hours of these channels, okay, think of me whatever you want, whatever, who cares about that? I'm equanimous with your feelings towards me. I've noticed they do get snappy when they talk about Christianity. They do keep composure when they talk. They're very gentle when they talk about Buddhist teachings, but after so long, you can tell there's a different tone when speaking or criticizing Christianity. They're like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the main concern that I've taken away is that Buddhism has a better justice system than Christianity.
And it's just, so here's my thoughts. Karma is similar to God's justice in that, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, right? That's God's law. That is, you do something bad, for an equal-sized consequence should be its result. All right, so an eye for an eye, right? If you put out somebody's eye, you have to pay the equivalent of price of an eye, or get your own eye put out. Not usually what they did in the Old Testament, but that's the consequence. So karma, similarly, you kill a puppy, your puppy dies in the next life. Whatever. It's a similar kind of recurring thing. However, there's a couple faults with karma that I think make it an obviously superior, not superior. I'm forgetting the word. Bad.
Inferior.
Inferior. That's the word. Inferior justice system. First of all, you have no idea how it works. God's law is like displayed and exactly how He's going to judge you, right? Did you love the Lord God with all your heart, soul, and with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength? Did you love your neighbor as yourself? Did you defraud people with false measures? Like, there's a lot of different things that God can directly judge you on in a flat set of rules. Karma, on the other hand, is not only ambiguous in like, oh, maybe this is good karma, maybe this is bad karma, whereas Christians will say, is this a sin, is this not a sin? But you should be able to figure it out from the law, from God's word. But karma is not only generally ambiguous. I mean, they've got the eightfold path for what is good, so you could try to judge it up against that, but it's also administered by no one. It just happens. So it's hard to say that it's just or unjust, because there is no justice in Buddhism. It's just what happens. It's like, things fall down. Is that just or unjust? I don't know. It's just what happens. So when people do bad things, how are we to say that it's just the proportion that they get hurt? So say, they punch a toddler and then they lose an eye. Okay. Was that proportional? I don't know. Maybe it's actually unjust and karma did it anyways. Like, what if you didn't do your homework? Sorry, your family dies. You could say that's karma, but like, who's to say that's unjust? Maybe that was just like the way karma works. Like, didn't do your homework, so I guess all your family dies. I mean, that's not particularly just. I'm sure Buddhists would be like, that's not proportional. And if God did that in the Old Testament, that's similar kind of like, somebody didn't do their homework, so I'm going to kill their whole family. The Buddhists would be the first ones to say, hurrah, it's too mean, unjust. But their own karma could do whatever. Like, there's no way to figure out what it's going to do, and if it's really going to be proportional. They just feel with their hearts. Oh, that sounds proportional, so that's probably what karma does. And if somebody dies, like somebody gets cancer and dies, they just say, well, must have been something bad they did in their past life. What? Like, what do they do in their past life that registered cancer? Like, they don't even know. How can they even learn from what happened in the past life? It's honestly arbitrary. It's like paying for the sins of your father is what it is. And I know they hate that. Non-Christians usually hate inherited sin because we know it's true, right? We know that we all are responsible for Adam's sin. They hate that, so they want to get away from it. But at the same time, karma is like that times 10, because it's not just the ultimate reality that you've sinned and therefore, or that your father was a sinner and therefore you will be a sinner, but it's like the specifics that your father did are brought on you, which, by the way, in God's law, well, yes, the sins the father are visited on the son to the children for 4 generations. That's a general cursing because of the badness of the father. It's not specific. It's not your father killed 10 people, so you have to pay the debt for 10 people. It's just like, he killed 10 people, he was a sinner, you're gonna be a murderer, like you are bad. I'm not going to help the rest of the generations. That's the kind of cursing that is in God's law. But at the same time, God's law also says you cannot visit the specific sins of the father onto the son, because the son didn't do it, right? So, like, you know, if a dad murders 10 people, you can't go to the son and say, well, we're going to kill your son because you killed 10 people. No, you have to visit it on the murderer. And so karma essentially is like passing it off to the next life. You know, it sucks to be, Sydney, because Michael is just living it up in my life, so Sydney's going to suffer, but it's not me. So great. It's kind of in a way like the just Jehovah's Witnesses that we talked about previously, where they're like living their most lawful life here so that they can live in the next life, but it's not them being reincarnated. It's some copy of them.
It's a
clone. Has the same memories, but it's not them. So they get, they're the suckers in this situation, because Michael 2.0 gets to enjoy heaven, while Michael 1.0 had to suffer on earth. Essentially, in reincarnation, you could easily become, and karma reincarnation, you could easily become a nihilist. I'm looking for the like a gluttony loving sadist who just lives for the now, because the next life will have to deal with all the consequences. Right now, I'm just living it up. And your karma might be like building bad, but
hedonist.
Hedonist. Exactly. You're a hedonist, right? You're just like living for the now, and you're outrunning your karma. So the next life's going to be awful, but that's the future. So it's not. You can do that on earth in Christianity, but you won't be another person, and you'll have memories of what you did on earth. So I feel that version of justice is far more direct and knowable than karma ever could be.
And I would say the same. On another note, as Rabbi Zacharias, recently passed away. He's
famous Christian apologist.
Yes, and from an Indian background. Speaking with a monk, he's telling that, gathering his thoughts, his bank accountant can tell him how much he owes in loans, but karma can't tell you how much you have to pay still. So a loan, as strange as if you have a lot of interest might be, how much you have to pay back. With karma, you don't. You don't have like in games, you don't have like a score floating next to your head that you can see. So it's very ambiguous, a problem there. And on the same note, and I think it's worth mentioning, part of, at least in the US, with people with Christian background, they don't like the idea of you were bad, a sinful person for a few years on earth, and then you get to spend eternity in hell. Hence why they like the idea of Buddhists. Okay,
temporal, right? It's
yes,
temporary.
Yes. So, well, the problem is, I guess, who are you sinning against, and also who says you're going to stop sinning in hell. But that's another can of worms that we talked about previously in Reformed, on the Reformed faith topic. So.
Yeah, I'll say I'm just remembering another problem with karma. There is no reciprocation for the victim in karma. Like, being a victim of bad things doesn't give you good karma.
Right.
But doing bad things gives you bad karma.
Right.
So there's punishment for wickedness, sure, but there's no help for the victim. Whereas in God's law, in his direct earthly law that he gives, if you steal something from someone, you have to pay, but the payments go to the victim. So there's restitution to the victim, and all the laws are like that, right? If you put out somebody's eye, you don't just have to pay a fine to the government. You have to pay to the person that you put out the eye of, or whoever. It's always direct restitution for the person. And so, of course, ultimately, you are sinning against God, and so you have to be rectified against God, and so the punishment against God is his death forever, right, in hell. So the victim there is God, and he is vindicated in the end. But in karma, there's no vindication. There's just punishment for the wicked. There's no help for the for the victim.
And reward for yourself too, which everyone
And
likes to hear.
it's all for the doer. None of it, the victim is ignored.
Mm-hmm. So, it seems we tackle the issues here of why it's attractive. At least on the surface level, the nice, happy stuff, not all the deep stuff, or forgetting about your fabrication. This universe is gonna end too. Is gonna recycle again to the next kalpa. I will just leave it as a cliffhanger. We're not gonna even talk about the universes or all the Buddhas that came before thousands of years. Anyway, all of that people ignore because it sounds very strange, and I think it is very strange. We're going to put that aside. I would say, that's something worth looking into on your own, all the different stages of all the eons, the infinite universe. People ignore that, but they like the happy stuff, and also they don't like, I would say, living God. Hence why things that they criticize is hell, Christian hell.
Mm-hmm. I'd much rather have the cold, the 8 cold, 8 hot hell, and that's so much better.
Yeah. And stay there for like 1 sextillion years.
But apparently you can like vacation in the real world
as a tiny demon.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So dislike for the living God, as we all know from rebellion against God, we're all rebels before being restored to proper relationship through the sacrifice of Christ. And also, as I mentioned, just the nice warm sensations of wishing good upon yourself and wishing good upon others, because who doesn't like that?
Well, there's greater joy in Jesus Christ, right? With karma, it's always hanging over your head. With Jesus Christ, there's absolute freedom. With Buddhism, you have temporary relief in your weird meditations, but during the day, you'll be hounded by the same troubles that always troubled you. You'll never be able to reach their Zen state. It just even the most Zen-looking guy, it can't be. He's going to the wrong peace, the wrong fount. With Christianity, there's actual peace. He's the only way, the truth, and life. He is the Prince of Peace. That's his title. So he is real peace. And that's why we have found our cause in serving that Lord Jesus Christ. I've been Michael, the man behind the machine. And now you can say your outro, Sebastian.
Yes, Sebastian, the bookkeeper.
Thanks for listening. If you want to see the rest of our episodes, you can go to foundcause.podbean.com and download all the episodes for your listening pleasure. This will just be the audio. On video, we've got facebook.com/foundcause. You can see all our videos. Also on YouTube and iTunes and Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, where we do something completely different. I think Theodore will be even here. I don't know where we're going to fit him. I think I've said this before. Maybe we'll have to crouch here and he can sit here. I don't know. We do something completely different. Thanks for listening. See you then. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.